working diligently on making improvements and keeping the progression of responsive going, as well as Janine Williamson, our support manager, who is really the lead charge on making sure our migration to this new theme takes place. As always, you know I love to do these. Can we get a sound check? 1, 2, 1, 2. Can you hear me? Put it in the chat box, please. Yep. All right, wonderful, and off we go. We're expecting this to take about 40-45 minutes to get through all the material we want to talk a little bit about today and show you to cover up our agenda, and so we will hope to have plenty of time for Q&A. One thing I'd like to note is we're demoing and explaining to you some of the things that we've been doing. We're open to Q&A. Please put your questions in the Q&A box. Note that if you are asking very individually station-specific types of questions, we will probably address those either on an enterprise response, or we will do some follow-up with you as we go along. And please note that during your migration process, we do work one-on-one with you to deal with some of your station-specific type needs and questions. With that, I want to introduce Adam.
Hello.
Take it away.
All right, excellent. All right, thank you, Stephanie. Yes, I'm Adam Kirk, and I've been the interim product owner since Aaron Martin left back in kind of the end of October, I guess, and that was the last webinar of this sort. So we're going to be going through some of the things we've done since then, and we go over our agenda right now. So we're going to review the goals of the responsive theme, basically why we did what we've been working on and why we're continuing to work on this. We'll review briefly what responsive design is and why we think it's a good idea. I understand that probably many people are fairly familiar with it, but in case people have any questions, we just want to get on the same page. We're going to talk a bit about what we've learned so far as we've rolled out the responsive theme to the first wave or two of stations. We've received feedback and we've learned some things. Positive things, but some other things we want to talk a little bit about and what we're doing about it. And then we'll talk about new features and enhancements, which generally came out of that feedback from the first wave. And then where we're going next, a sense of timing and what our high-level priorities are for what's going to come up. And then I will pass this over to Janine, and she'll talk about onboarding and questions. So great. So to review the goals for the responsive theme, the responsive project, which is something we've been thinking about now for months and months, they were to offer a responsive theme that benefits from all the things what responsive design does very well. And we'll be going over what some of those things are in a second. To provide stations with flexibility, so this is actually one of our ongoing themes just in general, but it certainly applies to the responsive project as well. To provide a clean, content-focused, engaging design, so this is kind of getting at the end-user experience and wanting to drive audience engagement, and this is one of the things we believe we can do with a responsive design. To provide value to stations as quickly as possible, meaning trying to, or not trying, but actually taking on projects and tasks that we can release relatively quickly so that people can start to benefit from those things and we can validate those things. And in some cases, when we can make changes that would benefit everybody, whether on responsive or not, we have tried to prioritize those things. To collaborate with stations. So this is, of course, an ongoing theme of ours and a goal. With responsive theme in particular, we worked closely with a number of stations as part of a group called the Core Publisher Advisory Group. And that was a way for us to, I guess in early stages, really validate a bunch of our thinking, set goals, find out what was important, find out what some of the first areas for us to look into should be, and basically drove the first steps, I would say, for where we went with responsive. Now that we have some stations using responsive and have for a few months, we're kind of into a different phase of collaboration more directly with the stations who are using the theme and ongoingly with the stations who are about to be using the theme and so on. And to optimize the listening experience, that is something that's important to us, obviously. I know that in the last webinar we talked about that as being something that would come in January. Obviously, that does not come in January. We'll talk a bit about why and what we're doing about it now as we go through this. So to review, what is responsive design? Basically, it's an approach to web design in which a single site is crafted for optimal viewing across a range of devices. And in this video, this is just a high-level sense. Obviously, it looks a little different on your smartphone, but I think you've seen this kind of thing before. We don't expect that most people actually do that. We're not really designing it for the purpose of stretching your browser in and out, but that just demonstrates how, if you're on a tablet of an unpredictable width or a phone of varying sizes, responsive is for you. Specifically, it's better for users because it works well no matter how they access the site. It's great for tracking because it provides integrated and complete analytics data, which is very important to us because it enables us to basically look at, with this one site, we can kind of look at everybody, and not only is it easier, but it gives us more meaningful data, more actionable data. It's good for social because it's easier to share when there's the same web page that's being passed around. It's easier to manage because there's only one website to update and there's one set of code to maintain. That's kind of a big part of what responsive is, the single code base, as opposed to for people who have used our MDOT solution where you have a separate code base. It's two different things to maintain, two very different experiences. And it's great for search, and this is also a really important one, because Google recommends responsive from their developers.google.com blog. Responsive design is Google's recommended design pattern, and they reward responsive. Here on the left, you can see that our responsive sites pass their mobile-friendly test. Awesome, this page is mobile-friendly, KBIA. That goes for all of the responsive sites, by the way. And on the right, you can see their algorithm in general likes to see responsive sites, they say, and we see that reflected in our analytics data, which Michelle has spoken about some, but also with the way that Google highlights mobile-friendly in search results. You can see it says mobile-friendly here for one of our responsive sites because it's responsive. So that's really exciting to see. So what we've learned, at a very high level, we have learned that smart technology plus compelling station content can really result in improved audience engagement. Specifically, from analytics, and again, for analytics here, I'm going to stay fairly high level because Michelle Bellatier, who's our analytics person, will continue to have webinars kind of digging into the numbers more deeply. But I've spoken with her about how we appear to be doing, and all this is the case in general terms. Obviously, with a lot of different stations, there's, you could easily spend a whole hour just talking about the numbers. But generally speaking, what we've seen is increases in traffic from organic search in the weeks immediately following the switch to responsive. Direct visits increased. More visits included story content than before. Listening to inline audio increased. And streaming remained steady. And that last one I wanted to point out simply because we haven't done much with the listening experience in responsive other than to have a little button that takes you to a listening experience for streaming. So the fact that it's remained steady is a good sign, given that if it arguably it has not become a better experience, that one thing, and it's about to become a better experience, but it has remained steady. So just an example here, Austin at KBIA was nice enough to send along some, he was excited to see these numbers recently. He said, I'm seeing absolutely massive period over period growth, and honestly, I'll attribute a lot of that to a new digital strategy based on responsive web design. And these numbers are quite high. There are growing and users growing incredibly. Talked to Michelle about this, and we're not going to make too much an anecdote of 1 month. It's not actually a month; it's like a 30-day period or something. But it's very intriguing, and we want to, we're going to be watching this in general, in aggregate. We're certainly excited for Austin and KBIA. What we've learned from stations: editors like the experience of working with responsive in general because the workflow hasn't changed very much. The stations are pleased with the flexibility and effectiveness of some of our new homepage blocks, and more will be coming. I'll be behind.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm skipping ahead here, and we.
No, it's the toggle back and toggle forward, just so we can.
Is that what's going to do it? Let's see. Sorry, folks, we're just not seeing the page that I'm on reflected on. Do we need to possibly? Oh, there we go. There we go. So editors like the experience. Workflow hasn't changed very much, they said. Stations pleased with the flexibility and effectiveness of new homepage blocks. And I'm going to show some examples of those homepage blocks towards the end. Users are pleased and can find content they want. This is just to some extent based on some station interviews that we did, as well as some usability work we did as we were developing the responsive theme and starting to roll it out. Jenna at KUOW said, mainly we've had good news from our users. People like it. And at Wyoming Public Media, we see much more engagement with new blocks than we ever did with skyboxes. We had a mini pledge drive recently, and the site worked really well. We used the responsive blocks. It was clean and simple, and that's April at UPR told us that. Austin said, we are now the slickest local media. The design is years above all our competitors. So thank you, Austin, for that compliment. It's very good to just get some good news like that. We also heard some concerns and criticisms, so we're not trying to put a wash over everything. We've heard these concerns, and we've worked to address the most pressing issues in the last few releases, and we'll go through them one at a time right now. I don't want to pretend like we've solved every station's concern or criticism or issue. This is going to obviously be ongoing. I think everybody's pretty familiar with how we work with Core Publisher, and we are iterative, and we try to be as responsive as we can to feedback, and we try to take on the high-value things that can be a solution for as many stations or have the most bang for the buck. So one of these concerns, criticisms, stations reported needing more header options. Let's just see this little animation here. Watch this. Ring. Our initial design. This is not a Core Publisher design. Obviously, this is NPR, but our initial design did something similar. We made the header on interior pages, like posts, smaller than on the home page. It's a common design pattern, and we like it because it reduces clutter and enables users to focus on content like the story. So you can see that's going on here. However, it doesn't work for everybody. There are certain kinds of logos that don't read as well, particularly if there's like small type or even tiny type as part of the logo, or in some cases, some stations just they don't like the change, or for whatever reason, we had made a decision that applied to everybody. That turns out, that's not so great. People wanted to have some flexibility there, and that was something we could do by basically giving a configurable option, so a station could say, hey, I want my header height to stay the same, so the logo will stay the same size as people click around. Not everybody is doing that. Some people are doing that. That's great. That header configuration page provides some other configuration tools, options, I guess I should say. It is a template that we have for the header, and there are good reasons for that, having to do with needing to be responsive, needing to make something that we can predict and that we can not have so much going on that it's very difficult to work with. But given that template solution, given the range of options that we've provided in that header admin form, we're finding that stations are producing a variety, a fairly diverse range of headers to meet their needs. Stations reported needing more footer options. So we've taken the first step towards this. We'll sort of get feedback and hear how this goes. The initial responsive footer was inadequate for some stations because it didn't let folks meet certain requirements, specifically to display partner logos across the site, to display required links, such as to privacy policies. You can see the circled in red there. That's too limited for many stations. It just had the station name and the year. So we're providing configuration pages similar to the Flexi menu so that stations can upload logos, provide a link for those logos, and provide some extra links in addition at the bottom. For people who are familiar with our table queue, that's the, I don't know, that's the right word for it. The various methods for people to add items to their Flexi menu. It's the same basic toolkit that we're using. And if you're not familiar with that, we'll show you. It's reasonably straightforward. You add in the thing that you want. You can drag and drop to sort of adjust the order. Stations told us that our interim way of handling live streams needed improvements. So obviously, I said that we are focused on moving into working on the player, the persistent player, as a kind of next thing. Or I don't know if I said that, but that is what I will be saying. But in the meantime, we have this interim solution. Turned out there were some problems with it that we just couldn't let sit there for 5 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever the case is. For example, for many stations that only had one stream, users were reporting that it was confusing because they would go to click on it, but it wouldn't start playing. You would just open this menu that only had one item in it that might say, click again, and you'd have to click again, and that was kind of frustrating. It didn't work on IE9 to click to listen to it. The player pop-ups weren't configurable, so we had sort of rolled out the gate with something that you'd click, it would expand, but it was just set to be 100% of the width of the browser, which looked really clunky and awkward and difficult for users, for not all, but for certain players that were intended to be displayed in a narrower configuration. So those were all things that were relatively straightforward that we could address without getting into like a redo. We didn't want to make an entirely new and different player and then have to rebuild it yet again. We wanted to just do some relatively straightforward things that could solve those kinds of issues, and so we've done those things. I won't say too much more about IE9. IE9 is troubles. It can predict. I know that there may still be some other problems with IE9. We are keeping track of them as they come up and looking at them as they come up and seeing what we can solve and what we can't solve. We're looking at the numbers too. We have, I don't know, I think it's around 4% or 4.5% of, in general, people coming to Core Publisher are on IE9. So that's like above, right around, it's like at the bottom of our threshold of what we want to support. So we would like to support that, even though it's not sort of a huge number. Station installers are having trouble running ads like they have done in the past, and just to be clear, digital service doesn't run ad campaigns for stations, but we aim to remove obstacles and to enable stations to run campaigns using standard DFP ad tools. So we wanted to be very sensitive to, when some stations said that they couldn't do things they used to do in the past, going for, I guess I would say, parity with what a station who'd previously been on one of the other themes would have experienced. So for stations that were using the MDOT solution before, they could basically roll, once they went live with it, they could have their ad, a mobile-sized ad at the top or at the bottom, and they would have it on every page as you clicked around. And when we went out with the responsive theme, it was only, the first pass was only having the ad show up on the home page, and it only showed up at the bottom. So now, while you can't configure it, while stations aren't going to be changing it back and forth, having two ads in both places, at least right now, you can choose one at the top, one at the bottom, and it will show up across the site.
When you say top and bottom, top means
like there we go, sort of above the content. Yeah, not at the very top. On this test site, you can see it's below the W test header, below Listen Live, but above the content. And we may continue to work on sort of the exact design, what it looks like in there. But in talking to the ad people at NPM and some others at what is it called? Anyway, that other ad networks, it's important for many stations who are selling these ads to have it show up kind of right at the top. And there are certainly fancier things we could do with it, but getting it so that it's visible is the first step. Some stations sell pencil pushdown ads. They've previously done this in Core Publisher. They weren't displaying on responsive, or there were some various challenges with responsive. So we researched how to best enable this, and we have implemented a solution. We worked with KPLU, some to understand what they were doing, and I don't think they ended up, I don't know if they've run one by now or not, but it's all working in our test sites, and as far as I know, they may have run one. I'm not actually sure of the latest from them. And there are other stations as well who have been interested in using this kind of ad unit. Actually, just quickly to review, that you may have seen this kind of ad where it automatically opens. In talking to NPM about their best practice recommendations, it's not considered a best practice for public media, according to NPM, to have it automatically open because of how disruptive that is. So the examples that we've done for people do not have them automatically open. I guess they could. I don't think anything would prevent that. But anyway, just to say. Another issue related to ads. Many stations place text around the ads. For example, we thank our sponsor, or we're supported by, or this is a station promotion. It wasn't working as intended in a responsive theme. You can see how it gets truncated there at the bottom, so you might actually not see the button you were supposed to click on, or you might not see part of the message. So our solution was to work pretty closely with NPM to understand kind of what options there were to do this kind of thing. Also to talk to the ad folks at NPR, how did they handle their solution. And we found a solution that works so that stations can configure DFP to do this, and a blog post explaining how to do this is on the way. Thank you, Michigan Radio, for working with us. We came up with a potential solution that we wanted to try out and see if it would go, and it did. Relatively straightforward. So now, where we're going next. So improved listening experience phase 1, basically a persistent player. I didn't say a persistent player in part because we're thinking of, the persistent player is like one part of an improved listening experience that ultimately might mean many various other things. So I don't want to overly limit us, but for the phase 1, it basically is the persistent player that I'm talking about here. The basic details or requirements for this kind of first release, as I would see it, would be persistence. So it continues playing as a user clicks around the site. The player will function, be usable across devices. We'll make sure it's optimized for mobile listening, so we're definitely going to be putting, and have been putting, thought and work into making sure that it functions in these different environments, as well as that it's usable and good for users across these different screen sizes, showing the right information and so on. We will make it handle from one to many live streams. We will show what's playing now on each live stream, or at least make it easy for users to find what's playing now, because that's one of the issues actually with our current interim solution. It just says listen live, but you don't know that what you're going to be listening live to. Support both display advertising and audio pre-roll underwriting that can be tied together. So, you could hear a brief message, this stream is brought to you by whatever, local hardware store, and you would see a display ad for that as well. Of course, optional, so stations wouldn't have to have any underwriting if you don't want to. And handle tracking for analytics. We want to make sure that we can do that as well as possible so that we can learn and respond to what we're learning. Obviously, there are a lot of other things that will be part of, could be part of listening, but I wanted to, put down some pretty clear and I think achievable things to kind of focus on next for that winter. I'll talk a little bit about sort of the phase 2 as well. But then after that, and to some extent these are in parallel, but we're aiming to work on the listening, kind of the player first. So just a near second is additional homepage blocks, late winter, early spring. In these little images here, you can sort of see that this is just trying to communicate the idea that this could be like a little block of environmental stories or NPR headlines or business news, things like that. These are basically news blocks for automatically displaying a set of headlines or teasers, and you could think of for people who have used things like the NPR news block or the category news blocks on the existing themes. This is not going to be that exact same thing, only responsive, but it will meet the same goals as that. We will give you tools to set the parameters that you want, actually giving you, I believe it will be greater flexibility to pull in different kinds of content. And these will be, so stations will be able to set the parameters. Stations can place the blocks in any region on the homepage. So in the existing Look 1, Look 2 homepage where you have the like NPR news block or whatever, those can only go in like either one place or maybe one of two places, whereas we'll make these so that they can be placed wherever. So any station will have that flexibility on the homepage. And provide display options so that stations can decide whether a block should only show headlines or should show more. For those of you who are familiar with our promo blocks, which I'm about to get into shortly, or our curated news blocks, you may know what we're talking about, how you can choose whether well, for the promo block, you can choose whether you want it to be a large image or a small image. So there may be some things like that we'll build, or not may, we're aiming to build in some things like that so that you would say, I just want headlines, or I want headlines and images, to be determined exactly what those options will be. Probably not too many, maybe 2 options. And then improved listening experience phase 2. This is in the spring. This is where we'll focus on the on-demand listening experience. So this could be part of the player. There could be various other ways that we can get at this, but this is a really important thing that we want to tackle, and we will be focusing on after we do those other 2 things that I just talked about. And now, what about all these other things that I know and we know people have questions about and have asked us about over the weeks and months and so on? The Now Playing block, the NPR News block, well, good news on these because they're in the pipeline. The Now Playing block, while we're not working on it per se, we are working on a player, we are working on the listening experience. The things that the Now Playing block are certainly the same kinds of things that we're thinking about here. I guess that's enough said on that. So the Now Playing block is not something necessarily that would exist, but the ability to see what's on air, the ability to see that there are different streams is something that we are definitely thinking about and going to be focusing on. The NPR News block, well, I just wanted to point that out because I know a number of stations like that. They like the fact that it automatically pulls in content. This is something that stations will be able to get with these homepage blocks that I talked about. The skyboxes, sticky strip, announcement block, program promotion block, these are all things that stations use some stations use on their homepages. And these are all things that we have made the decision to, though we think the new promo and also the curated news blocks take us a long way toward doing a lot of the things that these do, particularly the promo blocks. We believe we've focused on trying to make a single thing that can do more. So a promo block that you could use for all these different purposes and has some flexibility around, how and what it looks like and where it goes, rather than these very specific things that only do one thing.
And the caveat that you can have up to you can have a lot of promo blocks, and they can be designed to do very specific things, and they can actually be positioned anywhere in the layout.
Exactly.
So that does give you a lot of versatility, flexibility, and a little bit more control over layout and positioning overall.
Exactly. And just to be clear, this is about the home. We're talking about the home page here. People have asked me, and I believe generally have asked about other places within the site. That's definitely something that we're going to be thinking about. But for right now, it's not the first thing that you'll be seeing. It'll come after these other things, one way or the other. The people block. Well, we have not found that the people block drives engagement on the site. Understand that some stations like it. So that doesn't mean that we will not get to it. It simply has not been prioritized. I can't really say anything more about that right now.
Yeah, it really comes down to we're trying to understand like the motivation behind the value that the people block provides. The value from a station need perspective, a audience expectation, and really try to understand like what problem we would be solving by having some kind of people block or not having a people block. And so we're open to feedback. We continue to want to hear from stations, but again, there are more important things that we feel that we need to focus on at this time.
Exactly. The carousel, that's the rotating feature block, the thing that automatically changes one image out for another. So we found that this, compared to the lead stories block, this performed less well, yet it does some fairly similar work. It's definitely not identical, but they both are attempting to take certain stories, certain things, and make a big deal of them and make them larger and kind of stay on the site in a place where people will find them. So we decided to focus on the curated news blocks, which is very much like the lead stories block, as you'll see, rather than the carousel. There's more to say about the carousel as well, that we can talk about with stations who have specific questions about it. I don't actually think there are very many. Well, I don't know, but I guess the short answer is it didn't perform as well as the lead stories block, so we focused on that as making priorities. And of course, these things can be open for discussion, but we're trying to go for the high-value things, and we're trying to focus on simplifying.
I would also add that I think it's important to recognize that we do focus on the high-value things that we know are going to deliver a great user experience and solve a lot of problems across the entire community of need. But also with this, we recognize one of the motivations behind the carousel was really about addressing sometimes the internal station stakeholder needs at a station more than it was about trying to create an end-user experience. And so we'd always love to open up a dialogue about that. And so the questions that we would ask is, how are you managing competing needs and priorities at your station to help give each of your department's needs a voice? And we're hoping that having the versatility and the kind of the abundance of promo block availability to stations, that we can help address some of those internal needs without building a feature that doesn't necessarily generate engagement or conversion that will drive your users to consume more content and have them experience your brand in a different way. So I just wanted to be very candid and clear about it's not that we don't understand that there's a need, but we think that the need is really about managing internal priorities and politics. And we're open to having those discussions, but the high-value things that are going to deliver ROI of audience and engagement and that could track to revenue generation is how we kind of measure where the value is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So just very quickly, as we've talked about high value, reducing clutter for users, basically, so that they can more easily find content without too much going on. And we focused on making life simpler for stations by providing tools that are flexible to meet a variety of goals. And so now I would like to just show some examples of how different stations are working with these promo units and also to some extent with the curated news. So we don't even have the other homepage blocks that we were talking about, like the NPR news or category news stories. So you're not going to see that because that's still in the pipeline. But we're going to look at what stations have done with the existing curated news blocks and promo blocks. So here's an example from Michigan with State of Opportunity. They're using it with an image and a text and a button to drive a station promotion, essentially promoting this project, State of Opportunity. WGCU has this Hertz Road to Paradise. This is promoting a show, a program that drives to a different site altogether. And you can see also the placement here, obviously, it has flexibility. One is on the kind of a sidebar, and one is in the main content area. Here we have a pledge promotion, a campaign related to Valentine's Day. Here we have a different kind of pledge promotion. Again, I like this just interesting treatment with the use of color and photography. And this just highlights how when you make a promo, you can choose the background color, the text color, so that it can be red. It can be red with black. It could be, custom colors like this. Here we have event promotion. So this is in the main area. That's the at Lincoln Center event. Here is a curated news block. KBIA has taken, whereas some stations like here, you can see there's essentially two columns. There's a main content area that has the Mayhew Defense Governor's Plan is in that kind of main content area. Then there's the sidebar of sorts. The KBIA site is broken that apart and put these three stories just filling up all that space, which is very high impact and sometimes will make sense for certain stations. This station, MVPN, is using a single story at the top. That's the Mayhew single story curated news on top of a three-story. So these three stories with the sculptor and the LePage and the drone are, a little smaller than these, and that's simply because the station opted to put it into one region or another. And here we see yet another way with a single story with an image that's there in that main content area, and in that sidebar type of area, you can see there's a story, 50 years of WEMU, there's no image, and then, or I guess there is an image. 50 years of WEMU, and then there's the two smaller stories below it. It just has it serves a different purpose. It's smaller, it gives stations the choice to say, hey, these aren't as critical as this larger thing, we want it on the side. And so there are different ways that stations have worked with these tools. This is a promo block, the community conversation, so driving community engagement, or an event, basically. And the persistent announcement, this is neither the promo block or the curated news block, so it's a different thing, but it's something that persists across the entire site. So some stations use this for things like announcing pledge. It doesn't provide image or very many graphic tools. What's it? Site-wide alert. I'm sorry, I'm calling it the wrong thing. The site-wide alert was designed for kind of alert types of messages like snow emergency. However, it doesn't have to be used for that, and you can see that some stations are saying now hiring a reporter, or we're looking for feedback, or share your story. What stations have the freedom to do that?
And incorporates one link.
One link, exactly.
One phraseology of text and one link. It allows you to have that priority, focus, simplicity, but it also is it's persistent across the site, so that's a high value.
And I would say this was an example of a thing that we heard from some stations that there was a need for this kind of thing. We were able to create this reasonably quickly and get it out to stations to serve a very specific need. So not as flexible as the other things, but I think worth mentioning. And that is, we're getting close to wrapping up my portion of this. I wanted to just highlight a few resources for folks to be able to look at. There's an editorial guide to creating stories in Core Publisher's responsive design. That's a recent post that Eric Athis, our editorial trainer, wrote, and that's currently on the digital service homepage, yes. And Michelle wrote Core Publisher Responsive Theme Shows Measurable Gains in Analytics. That's a recent post that's also, I think, on the homepage and certainly on our site. And coming soon, how to administer a header post, how to administer the footer. The post will be about how to administer the header, how to administer the footer, and how to create ads with that text, like we saw Michigan had done. And I'm sure others as well. So before I hand it over to Janine, this is the list of the 24 stations that are currently on responsive. You can see that it encompasses a range of stations from slightly larger market to maybe slightly smaller markets, maybe some network stations, some things that are more of a theme or project, state of opportunity, and so on. So
before we get over, yeah, that's great. So Adam, thank you. That was absolutely outstanding. I want to take a couple of seconds for us to pick out a couple of questions that I've seen pop in. Just again, we may not get to every single question, but we will follow up, and we'll continue to have dialogue with stations during this entire process. But since Michelle Bellatier actually joined us, and Michelle Magnowski asked a specific question about, are you seeing, or what other stations are seeing the growth that KBIA was able to display?
Yeah, so we have continued to look at that and to pull more data. One of the challenges that we have is actually our two most recent cohorts of stations that have transitioned launched in November and then in December. And if you've been on an analytics call, you may recall that we pointed to two events, one in November and one in December. We call these the holidays. So looking for an increase in traffic in those cohorts was a little bit challenging just because of the timing of it. It's typically a time when we see traffic goes down. However, when we do look at that year-on-year, trying to exclude for the exact lineup of the holidays, the majority of stations are seeing large year-on-year increases. We see that pretty much across all device types, which is good. I think that one of the key benefits of responsive is the consistent look and feel and better performance across all of those devices, and we do see similar gains in those areas. However, I think before we publish a wider data set, we do want to wait until we have enough time kind of out of the holiday period. The other thing I wanted to mention is that KBIA, having launched over the summertime, they've really had enough time to kind of settle in, to see all of the benefits from Google search and indexing, and to see those performance improvements. So what they're actually seeing year on year in the data that Adam shared was far and away above what we had seen just in the initial weeks after the launch. We saw really positive things, but we had no idea that the results would be this strong. So we're kind of waiting to get a little bit more additional data before we can share some more of that, but I am hopeful that we will see those gains across the board for stations.
Great, and I just wanted to remind everybody that on a monthly basis, Michelle hosts a monthly analytics call where specifically around our analytics service, we continue to bring trends and insights and narrative to the business intelligence behind the products and services that you use with digital services, primarily our main product. So I would encourage each of you, if you're not currently on an email list that sends you an invite for the analytics service, we would encourage you to let us know and we will add you to that list. But friendly reminder, we have a monthly metrics call that will be worth your time. All right, so a next question that we have specifically from Joey Bennett is about the events calendar. That's a great question, Joey. Thank you for asking that. So we know that there's been a lot of chatter out there related to the events calendar, and here's where we stand. We intend to replace our existing public events calendar with a solution. Now, what solution? I have no idea. We're in the midst of trying to discover and solve that problem as we speak, but let me be very clear about what it means where we are public events. We have no intent nor plan to update the current public events experience to a responsive design. That means that we're not incorporating an integration of the calendar into the footer as it exists in the Core Publisher themes that are non-responsive. It does mean that from your navigation or from promo blocks that you can link to your event calendar section, which will not be taken away from you at any time until we have a path forward for a different solution. We will continue to communicate about those decisions as we have made them or are aware of them. Again, we will not shut off, we will not take away your existing public events platform until we know what the path forward is and that there is a plan and schedule to get you on it. With that, I hope that that answers very clearly some of the outstanding questions we have about that, and we appreciate your patience. All right, so we've got a couple other things. Let's see. Oh, this is a great one. Pa Westow, will the design support rotating headers? Adam, I'm going to have you answer this one.
I think that they most likely no. I would basically say no. The amount of the rotating headers that is being asked about, I believe, is that in some Core Publisher sites we have this JavaScript basically solution that a station could upload 2 or 3 or 4, I guess more, background images, and those would basically randomly serve up so that as you visited the site, you would see one image, and the next time you visited the site or when you clicked to go to a different page, you could see another one. It didn't actually rotate dynamically the way like while you were still on the site. Difficult to maintain, took resources that we don't necessarily have to build and to keep it working, and difficult to make responsive with a number of different images because it's just more file weight to download onto small devices through 3G or whatever that aren't necessarily going to be used. And there may, it's conceivable that there is a solution that one could create if we were really, really dedicated to spending a lot of resources on it, but far and away the listening experience, the more content-oriented things that we want to do and the things that will drive engagement and build audience are what we're going to be.
Right, and the other thing to add to that is that we are in the midst of building a header admin, and that header is already built, and it's out there. See, this is something new I learn every day. I'm kidding, I did know this. But the value in this is for stations that are asking this question. This header admin is a station-facing admin tool that allows stations to update the background image, the background color, some of the text, logos, the button color, on the header, all on your own. You're not required to go through us. We, to Adam's point about it's a lot of resources, so what we chose to do is invest in a way to allow stations to have more direct control over their header. It came with some hard decisions and sacrifice, and also with the implications of what responsive and living with users in a responsive world and what that experience would need to be. But we think what we've done is we have provided a huge value in providing station control over this particular aspect of your site, and we think that the benefits outweigh the potential disappointments that we recognize that this could bring to some stations. So that's the very exciting thing that you'll get to touch and learn how to use once you move to the responsive thing. Let me see. So I'm looking here. Okay, so I've got two questions. One question about blocks. In the old theme, we had a RSS block where stations could have one block where they could put an XML URL that would pull an RSS feed into a block to surface on the home page. I don't believe that that's currently in the pipeline, but what we would probably want to understand more is what the needs are and what the real incentive value proposition behind that type of need would be. So we're really interested in hearing from stations to help us understand that a little bit. But currently, right now, it is not in the pipeline since we want to focus on ag blocks, NPR News, and those types of pieces for the homepage.
Yeah, but it's a good question because I think Stephanie's answer is, as far as I understand, correct, totally. But I haven't dug that much into it myself, and not sure I can give you any further information. But it's the kind of thing that we might talk about as we talk about, gee, how do we prioritize the various tasks and portions of these homepage blocks? This question might come up. Is this something that could be part of that? Is this something that has to be a different thing? I'm not clear on how much effort would be involved. I'd be curious to know more about what exactly stations are looking for with that. So we may reach out to you to ask some questions.
Yes, and then Tom, we got your note. Thank you. We'll definitely have a conversation. So Rick Holter asks a little bit about the flexibility around topic pages and how have we even begun peeling back the onion of topic pages in the new theme experience?
There are some things. Let's see. We definitely gave that some thought for our first pass, and I'm afraid I can't go into great detail about the work that Aaron did, but I know that there was definitely thought put into what the topic pages would be for making something out of the gate. As far as, I assume you're familiar with that, but for people who aren't, right now you could have a topic page, there's some content that you could have there, I think just a description of what that topic is, basically an image, and I think some links to contact us or share, things like that, and then it pulls in automatically posts associated with that topic. There are a lot of things that we could do to enhance topic pages, and we have heard from stations about some of them, and it may be that the same kinds of improvements we could make to topic pages could apply to other similar sorts of pages, like program pages. They actually have a very similar template.
We have to look into it.
Yeah, so I would say that this is something that we've talked about as being further out on the roadmap after the other things that we've talked about, looking ahead towards summer as kind of like a time when we might, but I can't make a promise about that right now.
I think that's a fair thing to say.
One thing we did too is we added the ability to add custom descriptions and logos to categories and tag pages.
Oh, that's a big deal.
That's an update to ag pages. So we now allow the same functionality as far as the look of those ag pages that topic pages have.
Okay, yeah,
that's great.
I forgot about that.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina. That's wonderful. So we're at about a quarter of. I want to make sure that Janine has time to go over the onboarding for the migration process. So with that, I'm going to hand this off to Janine.
All right, thank you, Stephanie.
You want me to share you or just Janine?
Next slide. All right, so we are already on our 4th cycle, and we start next week, so we're really excited about that. For anyone that's on the call, That's starting next week. You've heard from Jackie McBride, and you will hear from me, Janine Williamson, or Keisha Chase next week to get started. We're really excited. We also have a full cycle for our Cycle 5, which is in March. So for any station that's out there that has not signed up yet, please complete the form as soon as possible. We want to get you signed up. And if you have signed up but you haven't confirmed your cycle with Jackie McBride, please follow up with her as well.
I want to also caveat, and I'm saying with your partnership stations, your valued partnership, our goal is to move everybody to this new theme so that we can really put some effort into understanding how to improve that theme and also allow us to focus on bringing enhancements and improvements of other products to the station community. So your partnership in scheduling this, and our goal would be that by the end of this summer that all stations are migrated to this new theme, and we encourage you to sign up for that. If the cycle that you would really want is full, we ask for your patience. So it really has been a first come, first serve as much as possible. And so those last stations, you know who you are. Sign it up. All right, with that, go on, Janine.
All right. So we did get some really great feedback from the stations that have completed the first couple of cycles, and we've made some adjustments to how we are completing each cycle here. So we have added a staged version of your site in the new theme, and we're going to talk to you during training about how that works, but it's really just a practice area, and it's an opportunity for you to get used to the new layouts and blocks. We also have live training webinars. Previously we had one each week, and we've added an additional training for each week so that stations have the opportunity to understand how to use the blocks, how to understand what the new features are, and how to update your workflow. It's also a great opportunity to share it with your station, so everyone at the station can be on the same page, from your leadership all the way to the content creators at the station. Group and one-on-one station check-in opportunities are also part of the cycle, so you can have that individualized attention where we can talk about specific things for your station, but you get the group feedback so you can ask questions or hear questions that other people may have asked that you didn't think of. We do have on-demand videos just in case the times when we have the webinars do not work for your schedule. So you can go back and watch it at a later date. And we do have how-to posts that we're creating as well, so you can use that as a companion and share that along at your station too. All right, so this is just a review of what the process is. It is a 3-week process. We are asking you for some of your time each week, 3 to 6 hours. There are 2 one-hour webinars for you to participate in, and then we have optional check-in calls and times for you to ask questions, do some homework. So it will allow you to have a little bit of time that you're going to spend on this each week. First week, we're going to have a kickoff call and concentrate on our double-click for publisher integration, how it works, and setting up your ads and getting those connected into Core Publisher responsive. It's a little different. We'll also have a little homework for you that week. Week 2, we're going to concentrate on the content type, so what's different about the post pages, what's different about the aggregation pages. We're going to go into a little bit of best practices and how you can curate your homepage experience. The final week, we're going to actually launch your site, and we're going to have a one-on-one post-launch call with you so you can gather any questions that you have gotten from your users or from people at the station and bring those to us, and we can work through those with you. All right, so we have just a reminder for next steps. Complete the setup form if you haven't done so as soon as possible. Confirm your cycle with Jackie McBride if you have been communicating with her. And we will contact you prior to your cycle with your access to your Backstage Practice account and links to your training registration and on-demand videos. That's it.
All right, that is wonderful. So just as a side note, we will be sending a follow-up note to this webinar just to close the loop on a couple of things, making sure that you have access to the new blog post that we've recommended that people take a look at, the link to the setup form, and some great suggestions from a couple of stations coming in. Can you share a list of the 24 live site URLs so they could maybe tour a couple of experiences and start getting a handle on some of the options of layout that each of you at stations can start thinking about ahead as we get to this. We want to thank you for your time today. We want to really just show an appreciation of your active engagement in this process with us. I would say this has been one of the most enriching projects I think I've been part of since I've been here for quite some time, because we have made stations truly part of every step of the process, and we can't tell you how much we value all of this input and feedback that we get by partnering with you. Again, we'll be following up with you with a note. This information will be posted on nprstations.org, so where you can go to nprstations.org, and in the search box you type in Core Publisher Updates. There is a page that outlines the entire work we've done related to the responsive project. So this recording as well as this deck will be put on that site, so you can also share it internally for those of your stations that may have missed this. Again, we want to thank you for your time. I want to thank Adam for a great job of being able to explain and demonstrate some of the amazing progress we're making with this project. Janine, thank you for your contribution of sharing the migration process, and thank you to stations. We encourage you to get on board. The sooner you get to touch this thing, the more your feedback matters, because it's really about getting some critical mass on understanding what are the key issues, needs, and problems that we need to help solve collectively across the enterprise. So with that, we're going to sign off. Have a wonderful day, and have a great weekend. Thank you.